What's up, ninjas and ninjas? Welcome to another episode of the Exposure Ninja Digital Marketing Podcast. My name's Tim Cameron Kitchen. I'm head ninja at Exposure Ninja and best-selling digital marketing author. Exposure Ninja, like this podcast, is all about helping you to generate more leads and sales through your website. That's it, building your business online. And in this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Holly Pither from Tribe PR. Now, Holly's come onto the show to talk about how you can build a tribe around your business. There are certain companies out there, and we talk about some specific examples that have a very clear identity, and that tends to mean that they are really attractive to some people. Basically, they make people fall in love with them. And then there are other companies that are just kind of meh, and they exist, but no one really gets passionate enough to be an advocate of those companies. So in this episode, we talk about how to make yourself one of the former instead of one of these boring meh companies. Basically, how to make people fall in love with your business. Now, there's loads of nuance to this. Not only do you have to come up with your identity, but you also have to find a way of embedding it and making sure that it's consistent across everything that you do. So all of the ads, all of the communications that you have both externally and internally, when any of your people talk, they need to be talking the same language. So we also talk about the kind of operational day-to-day of actually managing this stuff to make sure that it happens, because it's all really important if you're going to be seen as consistent in the eyes of your customers. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Don't forget, if you want some help with your digital marketing, then you can go to exposureninja.com and request a free website and marketing review. This thing is freaking awesome. Don't let the price tag fool you. Just because it's free doesn't mean it's not brilliant, because it is absolutely brilliant. What will happen is we'll ask you a few questions about your business, and then one of our team will take a look at your website, your digital marketing, and also your competitors, and they'll put together a video for you showing you how you can improve the volume of leads and sales that you get through your website. If you've had a free review from another company before, this ain't nothing like that. This is genuinely amazing, and you can go onto Google or Facebook and read the reviews from people who've had them. So go to exposureninja.com, do that today, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Holly, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So as you know, in this podcast, we go behind the scenes of a particular marketing strategy that you've used to grow businesses. We'll find out what you do, how well it works, and what you've learned. Ready to lift the curtain?
Definitely.
Awesome. So for those who don't know you, what is Tribe PR? And perhaps a fairly obvious question, but how do you guys make money?
Okay, well, thanks for having me on the show. Tribe PR, well, we're an independent communications agency. We specialise in earned media, but that kind of branches us out into social and owned media as well, and generally help clients of all sizes build brand advocacy, and that's across both B2B and B2C.
Awesome. So today...
How do I make money? Good question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise I wouldn't be here, would I? So how do we make money? Okay, well, we generally work in partnership with those marketing managers or owner-managed businesses, and help them do everything from kind of profile raising, helping them with their thought leadership, getting them out into the media, drafting copy for their websites, running their social media platforms for them, and kind of like a whole breadth of marketing strategies. And I think quite often I tend to find myself doing a lot more than just earned media. You tend to find yourself as a bit of an agony aunt as well to your clients. And I really like that. It's a good place to be. For sure. So we're going to be talking today about building a tribe. And I think it's probably worth us going back to the start, because I know that you're a big fan of building a tribe around a company as opposed to just having, like social media followers or something like that. What is a tribe, and are there any examples of companies that viewers and listeners might know that you think they've absolutely nailed this? They've got a really strong, loyal tribe. Okay, so don't think African tribe here. I'm thinking there's quite a different type of tribe that we're talking about. And in this situation, I'm talking about, I suppose, people who join a company or join a brand, follow it, and then actively talk about it. And I think that's what makes a company a bit more of a tribe. So rather than just creating press headlines or being known in the media, this is a company that people are talking about, and then kind of people are talking about on their behalf. and telling their stories for them. And I think that's what makes a company tribe worthy. There's plenty of examples out there of companies like that. Think of things like Innocent Smoothies, classic example. Think of Harley Davidson, very much a kind of tribal mentality in that they know exactly what they stand for. They are not, they know who are part of that tribe, and they don't kind of open that up to everyone. Those are really good examples of tribal-based marketing companies. And I think more and more companies are becoming like that as well, because what maybe used to be more of a B2C kind of way of doing things, now even B2B brands trying to be a bit more tribal or create movements in their approach. And I think that's really nice. So these are brands who people don't just buy them, people join them. And I think that's a really different type of way of working.
Yeah, I love that. It feels like, for examples like Innocent and Harley Davidson, they have such a clear identity that, you could see a tiny little sticker and you'd know that was from an Innocent product. And that's not just the branding, is it? That's the business's identity. Like,
yeah.
I guess we'll talk about how to build that, but how would a business know? How do they know if they've got a tribe already?
Okay, well, I think what this comes down to is understanding the difference between brand loyalty and brand advocacy. And I think as marketeers or anyone who works in brand building, we quite often get these two terms a bit mixed up. So in my opinion, someone who is loyal to your brand is someone who might buy your products or your services. They'll probably return to you again. They're a decent enough customer, but they're quite passive in their approach. Whereas a brand advocate, on the other hand, is someone who does all those great things. They buy from you again, they're repeat customers, but they go out and they tell your story for you. And, as a marketeer, like that's your dream, isn't it? Someone else is telling your story for you. You're not having to spend quite so much money on getting the story out there because everyone's telling it for you. So I think that's the difference, is understanding how to make those brand loyalists into brand advocates. And if you can do that, you're pretty much there, aren't you, with creating that kind of tribe movement.
So just to play devil's advocate, there's a listener out there, I can sense them, and they sell a widget. They sell something like this, and they're thinking, well, Harley Davidson makes fun things. Innocent Smoothies makes delicious things. I make boring things. Are there two groups of businesses, brands that can build a tribe and then brands that it's just never going to work for because they're too boring? Or is this something that everyone can do?
Well, look, I have worked in B2B, boring to boring, for a great many years now. And I have never struggled with this. I think it's not necessary, I don't think it's about a brand being the biggest brand out there. You don't have to be a Harley Davidson, but you have to have a purpose behind what you do. So frankly, if you're just creating widgets to sell them and build your bottom line and do nothing else, then you're probably not going to do that. You're probably not a tribal business. However, if you're a brand creating widgets to better whatever it might be, the human existence or how people work, or provide service excellence of some variety, and you're not just looking at building the bottom line, you're not just looking at profit, you've got some kind of purpose behind it, and as a result you're bringing people together, then I think you can. So it's not about those massive brands. And in fact, I don't have any of those massive brands on my book. I don't work for the likes of Innocent or Harley. I wish I did. But actually I work for much smaller brands who are all trying to do something a little bit different. So some of the brands I work with, for instance, are sustainable fashion brands, where they provide a kind of women's wear rental marketplace. So they're trying to can fast fashion, basically. So instead of buying a new product or a new item of clothing every week you're actually swapping clothes online, things like that. This is a small brand, it's really new, but it's really innovative, and they're trying to do something a little bit different. Likewise, another brand that's in the carbon offsetting space, where they're trying to get everyone to take responsibility for their carbon emissions. Again, they're not a charity, they're not a massive brand, but they are trying to do something really quite exciting. And it's those brands, I think, that can really stand out.
It's interesting, isn't it? There's, from my experience, there's always someone, at least someone in the company, and it's usually someone in sales who is really passionate and has they have the story of the business down. And sometimes the owner can have started it from quite a cynical place, or just seeing a pure business opportunity, but they'll often be an advocate inside the company, and they may have drifted into a sales type role who kind of gets that stuff and understands the bigger picture and understands the story and about the impact that the business has, because I guess every business has a positive impact, otherwise they wouldn't be in business.
Yeah, and I've worked in PR for a number of years, and I think I got a bit disenfranchised, I think, with those bigger brands, or any kind of company who are just kind of doing brand building for brand building's sake. It was just a line item on their marketing, and they knew they had to do it, but they didn't really know why. It's those businesses that do have that kind of person who really cares about what they're trying to do. They're really passionate, that you want to work with, because you know that you're doing something a little bit different. You're not just another bit of marketing spend. You're not just doing PR for PR's sake to get an amazing headline. There's a really good reason why, if that headline does go out there and people are going to read it, that's actually going to initiate some kind of positive change. So yeah, that's exactly the kind of business that I like to work with anyway.
Okay, so going from the start then, someone's listening and they're feeling a bit uncomfortable because they realise that they're not really differentiating themselves and they're just kind of in amongst it all. What's the first thing that they need to do to start this process of building a tribe, or becoming tribe worthy to start with, I guess?
All right. First is probably understanding their purpose and making sure that they do have a purpose behind that. We've kind of talked about that already, but just to kind of clarify that doesn't need to be, you don't need to be a charitable organization to have that purpose. And you don't have to, you can easily balance profit with purpose as well. I think, you see that quite a lot in the news agenda at the moment, how to balance profit with purpose. And I think that company needs to know how to do that as well. So once they've kind of understood that purpose, they need to really then get down to the nitty gritty of what they stand for. So it is that person that you were talking about previously who really understands the business, understands what they're trying to do, and probably spend a bit of time up front working out what their ethos is, what their brand message is, do a bit of brand archetype work to really get to the bottom of who they are and what they stand for. Because, the money that you put in at the offset there is probably going to pay dividends further down the line. And then most importantly, then communicate that to the rest of the team, because all too often I see brands of all sizes spending a lot of money on brand building and brand messaging, where they've got like 5 key people, maybe board members in that room. They go, yeah, we know exactly what we stand for. And then they forget to kind of tell the rest of the team. Marketing's the last to hear about it. The agencies never hear about it. If you know what you stand for, make sure that everyone then lives and breathes that. And that is everything from all your marketing collaterals to how you talk about yourself, to LinkedIn profiles and bios, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely everything that goes out on a corporate point of view needs to sing from that same hymn sheet.
It can feel scary to put a pin in it and say, right, that's what we're going to stand for. That's us. How final is that decision? Is this something that you see kind of evolving over time anyway, so it's less risky than it feels to put that first stake in the ground?
Yeah, I can't think of many brands who would have sat in that first ever session and gone, this is exactly who we are and we're always going to be this. I'm sure, Innocent, Harley Davidson, Coca-Cola, they're all brands that have evolved over time. We've seen it. We've kind of lived and breathed it with them, which has been kind of nice. That's exactly what tribal is, isn't it? As a consumer of those brands, you feel part of it. And the best brands are those ones who are going to bring you on that journey with them. So in any way that you can bring your customer with you, whether it's knitting those little hats for innocent, or choosing the next Coca-Cola color bottle, or whatever it might be. Like, bringing your customers on that journey is awesome too. But I think there is one important thing to note on this, is that it will evolve over time, but be really confident from the beginning that it's okay not to be everything to everyone. Some of the best brands kind of say what they stand for, and they don't make any apologies about that. And some of the best brands are quite exclusive. Think Harley Davidson, they're a classic example of that. That's okay. Don't try and be everything to everyone, because the brands that do it very often get a bit muddled, I think, in their communications anyway.
Yeah, it's not like they're intentionally being offensive to people that aren't their audience, are there? There's a fine line between that. But they're being very unapologetic about the group that they are going after.
Yeah. I mean, if I look at the brands that I work with, and I think of brands who are in the climate space that I work with, they know that there's certain people they probably will never kind of turn when it comes to things like fast fashion. There are certain people who will always just go out and buy a new piece of clothing. This brand is never going to appeal to them, so there's no point in trying to. It would be nice to try and change the agenda, and that's what they're trying to do. But there's certain people that they know that they'll probably never quite reach and never quite touch.
So say a brand has worked on this stuff and they've got an idea for these principles, these values that they stand for and that they own. What's the best way, to make sure that the marketing stuff that goes out is consistent with that, the team is consistent? Should this be like one central document that everyone reads from, or like, how do you embed this stuff?
I mean, there's loads of different ways, aren't there? There's things like people create playbooks and brand Bibles and things like that. But I think all too often they just don't get read. They get put on a Google Drive somewhere, don't they? And then people forget to look at them. And it might be like a new joiner who has a look at it once and then they never look at it again. But those brand messages and that ethos needs to be played back to the team on a regular basis, doesn't it? And it needs to be consistent across all their communications, across all of their channels. I think the only way to do it is just a constant reminder and ongoing team meetings where they talk about what they stand for and remind themselves. But one good way of doing it, I suppose, is to create copy and then kind of wring it dry across a lot of different communications channels. So this is another thing I see brands, particularly corporate brands, the B2B brands, doing quite a lot, is they create this lovely piece of content. It might be like a research report, lovely white paper, and then they kind of use it once. It's all on message, it's spot on in terms of branding, and then they just never use it again. It kind of gets put in that proverbial drawer and no one ever sees it again. And if they could then take that big piece of content and cut it up into tweets, into LinkedIn posts, into blogs, into reactive comments to the media, whatever it might be, that you've got that kind of consistent copy going out across all the different channels. And that is as much for internal as it is external as well, because if you don't keep reminding internally your team what you stand for in the form of little updates of this is what we're working on, they're not going to learn it either. So I think external marketing needs to work really, really closely with your internal team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking, when you said the Google Drive, I was just thinking, how many Google Drives and Dropboxes have a file that was last updated in 2016 called Brand Guidelines that no one's ever looked at since? And it's probably a few, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And I see so many. So as part of what I do, I run LinkedIn training as well for lots of my companies that I work with, and I get like board directors in a room, and they all describe their company differently on LinkedIn. All of them, they've all got a completely different about us copy, and I think that's just testament, isn't it, to it? That even from a boardroom point of view, they're all saying something different about the company. So you need to have that consistent copy that goes across all your different channels, so that everyone knows exactly what you stand for.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true. And I guess how you describe yourself on LinkedIn would be all kind of corporate wordy by default. And then how you describe yourself when you meet someone who's a potential client would actually be totally different. So even one person would describe themselves completely different in different situations. And is that because they don't have that clear vision that's being kind of handed down to them, or that has been agreed amongst the team? That's because they're making it up from scratch every time?
Probably, yeah. I mean, partly because they forget their elevator pitch, don't they? And they try and come up with something different each time. But I would challenge you on that and say, corporate, copy on LinkedIn. We really need to get away from that horrible corporate copy on LinkedIn. And this is, I actively try and encourage people through the LinkedIn training that I do. People by people on LinkedIn, and you need to make sure that you're much more human in your approach. So yes, you can have the corporate copy, and you should, the about us bit will obviously be about the company. But I try and encourage people to move that third copy, the third person copy into first person, just to make it a bit more human. Like, it seems so kind of 4 years ago, and we're just in a different era now, and I do think we just need to be a bit more human in our approach.
Yeah, completely agree. We have exactly the same challenge with website copy. You go on a site, particularly if there have been multiple decision makers in the build process and the company's slightly larger, and you look at the homepage, and sometimes it can take a couple of minutes to figure out what the business actually does, because we're thought leaders in the in innovations, but you're just like, what like the visitor's got a particular set of keywords in their head which they're looking for, and they go on the page, they can't see any of that. It just reads like this kind of brochure thing, and the conversion rate's terrible, bounce rate's huge. You just think, wait, you're coming at this from completely the wrong angle. It's coming at it from how do we want to be, rather than what does the customer want to see, or what's actually going to mean something to that customer.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And that is the biggest thing. We haven't really talked about it very much, but it's one of the biggest things when it comes to kind of a tribe-worthy company, is that they understand that they're talking for their customer or their audience.
Yeah.
And they're not talking about how great they are. That copy. So you get that piece of copy that's the website copy or the blog copy or whatever it might be, and just completely flip it on its head. So everything that they're saying about them is actually, don't put them as the hero of that journey. Put your customer as the hero, and completely change that copy to make sure that they are going to want to read it. Because who wants to read about the fact that you've just hired a new person or the fact that you've just won an award? Like, it's just not interesting.
Yeah, totally. So in this process of building these values and building this kind of identity, how do we make sure that we're building something which is actually going to be attractive to people, and that we're not just building something that we think might be a nice idea? Like, how did Innocent know that being cute and funny and slightly quirky, that must have felt like a risk to someone in the company? How did they know that was going to resonate and wasn't just going to appear as the dreaded unprofessional?
Well, I guess you've got to take a risk on all these things, haven't you? But what they did, which is just what we've talked about, is they put their customer and their audience as the hero of that story, and they're talking directly to a human. And if you can do that, you're part of the way there, because there are just so many brands out there that are just talking about themselves. Their newsletters are focused on how great they are. Their blogs are focused on how great they are. They're not talking about what the customer wants to hear. So I think that is got to be part of the way there. But, you're going to take a risk. If you're going to do something like Innocent did, it is a risk. But it's massively paid off, and they just knew what they stood for, and they've carried on down that route.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? There are going to be people who react strongly against Innocent. They don't like it for whatever reason, and they can express it directly to Innocent social channels. So if Innocent has kind of picked an identity which doesn't suit, as soon as they start getting that criticism on social, they're going to buckle, because they're going to second guess and think, oh, do you know what, maybe we've been a bit wrong here, or maybe we've been hasty. Whereas if it's something that they actually believe in, they'll have a lot more resilience when that inevitable criticism comes in, to say, yeah, do you know what, they might not like it, but we feel really strongly that this is who we are and these are the values that we represent. So enjoy it.
Yeah, you're about to put two fingers up there, weren't you?
Yeah, well, they were, but they were together, so it's technically not swearing.
Exactly.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt your listening or viewing experience, but I'm really not sorry. If you haven't checked out How to Get to the Top of Google, the 2020 edition, this is one of our best-selling books, and it's all about how to get your website or any website to the top of Google in 2020. You can get it on Amazon or you can listen to it on Audible. So just search for How to Get to the Top of Google 2020 and you will find it and you will love it. If you don't love it, then you can email me, tim@exposureninja.com, and I will personally refund you every penny that you paid for it. Can't say fairer than that. Okay. Who should be in charge of this? In a small or medium-sized company where you've got the business owner, you've got the marketing manager, you might have some people on the marketing team. Whose responsibility is this stuff to kind of be guardian of it, to make sure that anything that goes out of the door is on brand?
Well, I guess when you say that, that implies, yeah, there is a marketing department. I mean, certainly some of the brands that I work with, I'll work with an owner-managed business. So in that case, there isn't anyone there to take responsibility of it aside from the CEO or the MD. I think, the responsibility has to lie with marketing, but it also has to rely on the senior people as well, that they're also singing off that same hymn sheet. So if they're going into a sales pitch or a new biz meeting and they're not talking the same story as marketing, then you've got a bit of a problem. But certainly from a consistency point of view and making sure all that copy and everything that you're doing is on brand, it's got to be marketing who are double checking it.
And how does someone know if this stuff is working? So particularly for a small business, when they take this leap and they put some conscious effort into building their identity and building their values, and they start talking in this consistent way, what sort of feedback should they be looking for to say, yeah, you're on the right channel, keep going with this?
I guess there's a number of things there, isn't there? There's probably people, most importantly, people are talking about them and telling their story in the same way. And that they're starting to be involved in conversations rather than kind of interrupting those conversations. That's quite important. So it feels like it's really natural. That's, if you've got people talking about you, you're in a good place in a good way. And then all the usual things, all of I'm tracking all those standard marketing tactics to know that the things that we're working on is doing well. And particularly from an earned media point of view, I'm tracking where we're covered and domain authority of the website that we're working on and all those good things. They're always going to be looked at. But I guess most of all, it's like people are starting to have conversations about you and starting to talk about you in a really good way.
So I guess social listening is quite important there, because that's stuff that you can just head over straight onto Twitter now and see what sort of people are talking about you and see if the language that they're using is the way that you would talk. And if it is, then I guess you got some resonance there.
Yeah, and it might not just be talking about that brand really either. It might just be talking about that topic as well. I think that's quite important. Certainly some of the more purposeful businesses, they're starting a trend towards a topic rather than talking always about them. So they're all in a movement together. And I think that's really nice as well. So a lot of the clients that I work with, they're probably not necessarily, of course, they're competing against other businesses, but ultimately they just want general awareness to be bigger of particular trends.
Right.
And I think things like that are quite important as well. So I work for a co-work and nursery space where we're talking all about, we're trying to get rid of the parenthood penalty and try and get more parents back to work. And success for them, obviously, is column inches and everything else and to see their name in lights. But at the same time, it's to see other people talking about the parenthood penalty and how we can kind of get rid of that. You know what I mean? Because they're trying to create that movement of bringing people together.
Yeah, that's cool. And so is that term something that they kind of coined, and that kind of hook that they created?
Parenthood penalty?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a phrase that's known out there.
Okay.
Not something that they necessarily they came up with, but it's certainly something that they're using an awful lot and that people have started using more. And the moment you say it to an editor, their ears kind of prick up and go, okay, what's this about? It's a nice bit of alliteration, isn't it? For
Yeah.
columns anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been fascinated recently by particularly populist politicians that, I mean, the Brexit campaign was a perfect example of a very complex topic, which was pitched to the electorate in a very straightforward and in some ways crude way. Where there would be certain issues which are simplified down to a very, massively oversimplified into. I mean, we saw the banner which had all the refugees like in a line, and that was, it's a meme, isn't it? Essentially, it's a very, and I know we're kind of straying outside the topic of building a tribe, but I'm just fascinated at the moment by how using these very simple, very straightforward messages repeated can start to build awareness and can start to build a momentum in a group of people. And I don't think it feels like politics is kind of leading that at the moment. And I think particularly for small and medium-sized businesses.
I mean, the political parties are exactly that, aren't they? In that respect, whether they've got a force for good or a purpose, I'm not sure. We'll leave that one. But I suppose to your point, I mean, I sometimes have clients who say, "Oh, I feel like we've said this phrase quite a lot now. We've said this in our copy." I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point. You know. A lot of what you do when it's brand building and earned media is you sort of want to throw enough at the wall and hope some of it sticks, isn't it? And I think you do need to use those consistent phrases, and you do need to find a little term that works for you and keep pushing it out there in across all of your copy, even though to you it feels really boring and you've used it a number of times. To the outside audience, that momentum and repetition really helps.
Oh, exactly. I mean, you look at, it's almost funny, isn't it? You'll get someone reviewing a politician's speech, and there'll be a term like "get Brexit done," and they'll say, "Look how many times they say it," and they say it just over and over again to the point where you're like, "This is ridiculous." It's almost painful to watch. And then they interview the people outside Downing Street on the day that Conservatives are elected, and they say, "Why did you vote for them?" And they just repeat that term back, "Get Brexit." You're like, wow, okay, so it feels redundant, but actually by the time you're getting bored of saying it, it's just starting to break through into your audience's consciousness.
Yeah, I think that's a classic thing, isn't it, with brands as well, that they start to get bored really quickly with whatever it might be, what they stand for, or their main message, or their colours, or their logo, or something. And it's only really at that point that it's starting to get traction, and the customer, the consumer public, is starting to go, okay, I recognise and then suddenly go, oh, we're just going to change it all around because we're bored,
Yeah. I'm sure someone at Coke is bored of the Coke truck by now. I want to ask you about some campaigns that you've run and successes and failures. Not that we like to celebrate our failures necessarily, but has there been anything in your time in PR which you thought, this is going to absolutely smash it, this is going to be a complete home run, but it completely flopped?
Yeah.
Oh, that's reassuring. Not just me.
When you work in earned media, I mean, you can never second guess anything that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You have like a brilliant campaign that's about to go out, and then Kate and Will's go and do something, or Harry and Meghan go off and fly a private jet, and it just completely changes everything that you're going to be pushing out. Or you've got a lovely business to business piece, and Brexit gets announced. The headlines. It's been a hard time for corporate communications over the last couple of years because Brexit has just dominated. So yeah, there's always things like that. I guess more a learning, I suppose, in that what I've really noticed over the last couple of years is that, or the last year really, is that where you used to have easy wins, like trade media covering new appointments or new clients, things like that, it's just few and far between now. And it's my job as a PR consultant to kind of say to my clients that they've really got to get a bit more cut through on the stories that we create for them, because publications just don't want those stories anymore. One, because they're not that kind of, they're not that human story, and they're not putting the audience at the forefront of the story because it's too broadcasty, a bit too all about them. But two, because a lot of the trade publications have canned their news sections now as well. They're much more issues driven. So some of the big publications too, I'm not thinking like nationals now, I'm thinking like the trade press, where they used to have those news sections, they just don't use them so much anymore. And I think that's been a real learning. So there's been a number of times where I've thought, no, this is probably going to do quite well in the trade press, and it just hasn't. And it's because they're just not getting, they don't want that kind of news anymore. So it's been an interesting job to try and explain that to my clients when they want to talk about their new appointment or similar.
I mean, I guess it's a double-edged sword. Do you think that's happening because the competition for attention is so much greater now that the trade publications are realizing that the news page is so freaking boring, it's a complete waste of time?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking at eyes on that page, aren't they? And they're seeing that no one's interested in it.
Yeah.
Because it is all broadcasty about how great this firm is and what they're doing. And no one wants to read about that. Whereas the issues-based articles, those top tips pieces, the listicles, whatever they might be, they're getting loads of eyes on, and people are staying on the page for longer. So why, as a publisher, would you want to have a page that no one really is looking at and no one's absorbing?
Yeah.
You know, you would can, if you had that on your website or your client's website, you'd can it tomorrow, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Just, no one's looking at this page, so let's get rid of it, or whatever you do with it.
Yeah.
They're exactly the same.
It's one of the easiest traps to fall into, isn't it? I guess it comes back to being consumer focused. We'd be consumer focused when we're designing a brand, but we also need to be consumer focused when we're pitching to press. But the consumer is actually the publication, and what do they really want? And it's not the news about the latest board appointment, because no one aside from that person's family gives a shit.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
And even they don't really care. They'd rather read about Brexit or coronavirus or something.
Well, yeah, but as you can imagine, you know, that makes my job sometimes a bit difficult, trying to tell that to, you know, founder of a company who wants to get their news out there. So it's about trying to find other ways to get them in, get their story out there without being so obvious about the fact that it's a new appointment or similar.
Yeah. They need to get coronavirus, and then coverage is guaranteed. Yeah,
you'll be fine.
Are there any? The kind of flip side of that question, is there anything that you've done where you thought, no, I don't know, they really want to push this, but I'm not sure it's going to work, and it's ended up being a complete smash?
Yeah, less so that, yeah, I suppose one thing that I've been working on doing quite a bit of for myself, for Tribe PR, but also for my clients, is doing a number of what I guess I call crowdsourced pieces, where I kind of crowdsource a load of industry opinion together, mash it all together, and then use that for owned content on people's blogs, but also earned media as well, and sending it out to the media, sending it out to the press. And the press seem to love it, because it's not salesy, it's not broadcasty about how great that person is. Lots and lots of good opinion. Everyone who gets involved in it loves it, because they're particularly invested in the story themselves. There's a link back to their website, so that's all good for them as well. And then when it goes live, you know, you're getting tenfold the amount of shares on the story, because they're all sharing it themselves. So that I didn't think it was going to do quite so well, but I tried it for a client for a really boring predictions piece, like predictions of 2020, you know, one of those standard pieces, and it just did so well. And then I've just been continuing to do it, and it really does work very well.
It does, yeah, sure. We use for a long time we've been on the receipt, you know, the journo requests like Harrow and response source and stuff like that, and for a long time we've been pushing clients out through those to get bylines and stuff, and you know, like a quote and stuff. But now we've been realizing actually the real wins are when you're submitting those and getting the other people talking for exactly the reason you say, because then you've got 10 experts featured, they're all sharing the piece, and yeah, it's much better, isn't it? Getting
more eyes onto it. Yeah. It definitely works better than I thought it was. And also when you've got a particular client who's a bit more nervous, I suppose, about writing or having their own opinion, then that works really well as well, because they almost become the journalist. They're like the mediator. They can hide behind everyone else's opinion and still put out really nice content. It's a bit more risk averse as well.
Yeah, love it, love it. Okay, some quick fire questions to finish. So if you could, I was going to ask if you can only pick one marketing channel, what would it be? But I think you might say PR.
No, I wouldn't actually.
You wouldn't? Okay. What would you say?
Just because it's a bit different.
Yeah.
Obviously, PR is a great thing to invest in, guys. Keep investing in that. But if it was just one channel, I'd look at LinkedIn. Like if you look at one particular thing, I think it's great from a people by people kind of perspective, human channel. Love LinkedIn.
Yeah. I've been noticing a lot that content that you post on LinkedIn, like the half-life of something on Instagram or Facebook is a day max. But stuff on LinkedIn just sticks around forever, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's got such a long life cycle. It's, and you can, unlike all the algorithms of Facebook and everything else, you do stay around for a bit longer, and it's just really nice.
Yeah, cool. Love it. So next question, if you absolutely had to 10x Tribe PR sales in the next year, but you had unlimited marketing budget, what's the first thing that comes to mind that you would do?
Just hire loads of good content creators, like written people who can do good writing and good rich content, because like that's all Google really wants to see, and that's the way my world's going. Yeah.
So you put it all on your blog, or you be trying to get media through it?
Well, no, I'd be using them for writing all the content for clients as well. But yeah, on my blog, I'll try and make sure that gets a bit better ranking.
Yeah, love it. I'm going to say that answer was SEO.
Well, SEO PR is the future.
It certainly is. And then final question, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice on day one of starting Tribe PR, what would it be? Don't
work for free.
That's good.
I think when you set up, so many people say to you, oh, can you give me a little, and by the way, this just doesn't work because you can't do a little bit of PR. Can you give me a little bit of PR and I'll give you this, like a free so-and-so.
Yeah.
Like contra deals and working for free is a no-no. Value yourself from the beginning and start as you mean to go on.
Love it. Holly, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find out more about you and of course Tribe PR?
Well, you can have a look at my website, www.tribepr.co.uk, and then Holly Pither on all the usual social channels, Insta, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Holly. Hope you found this video useful. And remember, if you enjoyed it, click the little like button. If you want to check out more videos from Exposure Ninja, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and that little bell icon, or leave us a comment if you've got any questions or suggestions of things that you'd like to see us cover in future. Don't forget, if you want some help with your digital marketing, then you can head over to exposureninja.com/review and request a free website and digital marketing review. What will happen here is we'll ask you a few questions about your website and your goals, and one of our team will then put together a 15-minute video where we'll show you how to improve your website's ranking, your traffic, and your conversions. It's completely free of charge. I know, crazy, right? But danger, there is a chance that you'll become a client after seeing this review because it'll blow your socks off. I have to be honest, but don't let that put you off. Go to exposureninja.com/review, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.